Alright, so in this run I decided to play Aqu Qoyunlu. Now with Aqu Qoyunlu, the thing is, you get a lot of claims, but you don't have them at the start. Like, you don't just spawn with claims. So, the thing with Aqu Qoyunlu is that I like to do a rival war with Dokudir. So you could like get claims on Iraq and like half of Iran, roughly. Basically non-Timurid lands in Western Iran, that's what you get a claim on for my strategy. And then I go for Kafia, get mercenaries at 150 gold, and then I go into Iraq. That's basically the strategy if you want to like have a probably decent start at Aqu Qoyunlu. But here I'm just going after the Aqu Qoyunlu, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job. But the thing with Aqu Qoyunlu is it's pretty unstable, and at the same time the economy is also not that great. So just try and keep that in mind if you try and play Aqu Qoyunlu. Like you just saw there's like 2 wars and I already have like 5 rebellions, so that's a pretty big factor when you're playing Aqu Qoyunlu. Anyway, the rebellions get mopped up just fine, it's alright. I'm just waiting a little bit, just selling for time and getting some more troops. Well, I was. Anyway, I plan on going into like Mushasha and Ajam, because I think there may be a Timurids here. I'm not exactly sure. But if there is, Ajam's pretty important to try and grab. But I'm not in that hard, like heavy of a rush. The Mamluks just piled troops on my border, which is a bit concerning initially, but then I just get an alliance with them, so that turns out to be just fine, basically. Also with Aqu Qoyunlu to start, you start with most of your provinces being Myasophyte, so you might want to like convert that later if you're able to. It may cost a little bit, but it's pretty unstable, so it's probably worth it in the long run if you have a long run. But anyway, I'm just consolidating my stuff here basically, and I think I'm doing decent as of now. I'm trying to form my army up back again and trying to beat Mushasha, because Mushasha owns Basra, and that's pretty good in my opinion for like getting trade back basically. Although as Aqu Qoyunlu, trade is not as important as it is for other powers like Spain or Portugal basically, because Iran's more of like a conquest area, so it's different basically. Anyway, I go ahead and invade Ajam. I took their square fort thing, and Ajam fell. Basically, from here I just try and spiral off into Persia, but the Mamluks are taking Baluchistan here, so at the time I'm a bit concerned they might just like push right into Persia and like screw up the run, basically. Because the Mamluks are pretty strong, they could probably overpower Aqu Qoyunlu. Also, for the rebels I was talking about earlier is another rebel set. They're fine. This is just average Persian experience. But if you're playing in Persia, what I recommend you do is go for the biggest rebel stacks first, because if you get the smallest stacks, that's cool and all, but you might end up with not having enough troops to deal with the bigger stacks. So you do with the bigger stacks first, and then you go for the smaller stacks, because the smaller stacks are pretty easy to deal with, in my opinion, most of the time. Anyway, I go ahead and invade the Timurids to try and block the Mamluks from potentially going to the Timurids, which I think I did a pretty good job at here. But at this point, most of the Timurids are basically done for. I just send my army after their small defeated stack and just deal with that. But at this point, most of my territory is uncored, so if you're playing Aqu Qoyunlu or really any minor Persian state, you might want to core some stuff. Like, invest into core tech, that's basically the point. But I'm going after Mazandaran and some other areas. I could have formed Persia here, but I kinda like the Aqu Qoyunlu label. It looks cooler in my opinion. It's better than like the Basra run where I just formed Persia, and you couldn't really tell I did Basra if you just looked at it initially. I mean, other than the title, I guess. But some more rebels, it's not that big of a deal. I go after Timurids and just basically kick them out again, right there. And I core basically the entire Iraq, right there. And the rebels are dealt with again. and I go ahead and invade Bukhara. And also I buy Baluchistan from the Mamluks later. But at this point, Aqu Qoyunlu is mostly sustained on loans right now. So, Baluchistan is pretty pricey and it ends up just like a bankruptcy. But to be fair, bankruptcy would have probably just happened anyway. But I'm doing fine as of now. I'm just negotiating with the Mamluks, and he's a newer player, so it's fine that it takes a little bit of time to figure out how to set some stuff up. But I go ahead and I siege the Timurids, the Transoxianans here to try and get some like political power from rival war. I think I annexed the Transoxiana people, but like off camera. Anyway, I course some more stuff, so Iran is not as uncored as it was before. But anyway, I asked the Mamluks to sell some stuff, and he does. And I just slowly, bit by bit, buy his lands in Baluchistan. Even though it didn't have that much development, it costed a lot of money. Which was not that convenient for me. But I got my borders, and it looks pretty good for Aqu Qoyunlu. Especially before 1600. Oh yeah, quick side note, the Ottomans are a pretty strong player here. But they didn't really have any ambitions, well, any strong ambitions initially as far as I'm aware on Iraq or like Egypt. But the Mamluks did have ambitions on the Ottomans, so I guess they just formed their army like in Syria and just went in. Yep, there they go. But the Ottomans, they had a lot more manpower than the Mamluks, and the Mamluks, I don't think they had that much experience dealing with like the Ottoman army. I mean, they're a new player, I don't judge them, but yeah, that just kind of happened. I didn't really join, I was just kind of spectating what was going on. And the Mamluks are holding off somewhat decently as of now, but the war score, I think, is in the Ottomans' favor, because the Mamluks lost an aggressive war, so I'd assume the war goal would have been somewhere in Anatolia. So, just keeping in the back of your mind that the Mamluks are basically slowly losing that, I guess. Anyway, the Mamluks just left, that's fine. Well, we're approaching the end of the run that I recorded here. I do invade France later, but that's not on camera. I course some more stuff, and that's basically the run.